Greens I'm really excited about as well, not just about the men's side. And we're less than 2 months away from the WNBA draft. You know, March Madness is going to really put the women's game right there where it deserves again soon. What was the conversation over All-Star Weekend? Are we got a labor situation here? Are we going to have a season? What do we have here?
I think we all have had this idea that they are going to figure it out, you know, at the 11th hour or whenever they have to, because right now, Rich, like, you know, deadlines create action, and there's nothing happening right now. Like, they're not, if they were to quote unquote strike.
80% of the league are free agents. Almost everyone timed their contracts the same way. Most players signed one-year deals so they would hit free agency together with the new CBA negotiations. Right now, there are only around 20% of players under contract. For weeks, we've been talking about the ongoing WNBA collective bargaining situation, the tension, the disagreements, the pressure building behind the scenes. Recently, on The Rich Eisen Show, ESPN's Ramona Shelburne confirmed something that explains just how serious this situation has become. This is no longer just routine labor negotiations. A massive portion of the league does not currently have contracts. Reports indicate that many players aligned their deals intentionally to expire at the same time, increasing their leverage ahead of the new agreement. That strategy has now created a situation where roster construction across the league is largely frozen. Two expansion teams in Toronto and Portland are preparing to enter the league, but without a finalized CBA, they cannot properly build rosters. An expansion draft requires a financial framework. Free agency requires a defined salary cap. At the moment, those numbers are not locked in. The league recently released its regular season schedule, including matchups like the Indiana Fever versus the New York Liberty on April 25th. On the surface, that signals normalcy. But according to Shelburne, the timing of that release may have been driven by arena logistics. Arenas cannot hold open dates indefinitely. Without scheduled events, they allocate space to concerts, touring shows, and other bookings. The league needed to secure those dates, even if rosters remain uncertain. That move, as described on air, was a strategic necessity. At the
strike. Well, what are you striking? They're not missing any games. Like the only thing a strike would do is like make it so they don't get their health benefits anymore. That doesn't do anything, right? There's no pain point or pressure point. The first thing you've really, I guess we've missed free agency. You know, I feel bad for Toronto and Portland. They don't even have players. They were supposed to have an expansion draft. They need to get some players on their team. Those are inconveniences that can be dealt with. But the only thing you really start to miss is when you get closer and closer to that draft in April. And so we're still a really long ways away from those pressure points. And I think the union knows that, the league knows that, and everybody understands like we're getting uncomfortable. Adam Silver used this term.
The center of the conversation is one undeniable factor: momentum. Rich Eisen referenced what he called the golden goose, a clear nod to Caitlin Clark and the surge in attention she has brought to the league. Clark's arrival boosted attendance, television ratings, and sponsorship energy. The concern now is timing. If negotiations stretch too long, the league risks slowing down that momentum. Casual fans are often drawn to individual stars rather than league structures. If games aren't played on schedule, interest can shift elsewhere, especially during the NBA playoffs. Union leadership, including players like Breanna Stewart and Nneka Agumike, are advocating for stronger revenue sharing and long-term structural changes. From their perspective, this is about securing a sustainable future. From the owner's side, financial viability remains the primary concern. The timeline is tight. By March, several major steps must happen: salary cap finalized, expansion draft conducted, collegiate draft prepared, free agency negotiated, training camps organized. That is an enormous workload in a condensed window. Even if an agreement is reached soon, roster movement could be chaotic, with dozens of players negotiating simultaneously. Another layer to this discussion involves income disparities within the league. Established stars have endorsements and overseas opportunities. Younger or fringe players rely heavily on their WNBA contracts. Extended delays impact them differently. Adam Silver has publicly emphasized the importance of resolving negotiations efficiently. Media partners such as Disney, Amazon, and NBC have invested in broadcast rights. Stability matters to those partners. Right now, both sides are calculating leverage. The players are unified in seeking structural growth. Ownership is focused on long-term sustainability. The outcome will shape not just this season, but the next decade of the league. The key question is simple. Can both sides secure progress without sacrificing momentum? Because the window is open right now. Interest is high. Expansion is underway. Television deals are expanding. The foundation is being built. But foundations require alignment. March is approaching quickly, and what happens next will determine whether the league enters the 2026 season smoothly or after significant turbulence. The next few weeks will be critical.
The next few weeks will be critical, because once the calendar flips deeper into March, the conversation stops being theoretical. It stops being social media debates and podcast soundbites. It becomes operational reality. Front offices cannot function in a vacuum forever. Expansion teams cannot introduce themselves to their cities without actual players. Training staffs cannot design programs without knowing who they are training. Right now, the league is operating in a holding pattern, and holding patterns burn fuel. Let's break down what that actually means in practical terms. When roughly 80% of players are free agents at the same time, it doesn't just create leverage, it creates paralysis. General managers cannot structure multi-year plans because they don't know what the cap will be. Coaches cannot design systems because they don't know which core people.
11th hour, we're getting very uncomfortable right now because there's things that need to still happen, but we're not at a place where there can be real pain inflicted on either side by doing a strike or a lockout, et cetera. So I think we're getting closer from what I've heard in the background. The executive committee of the Players Association, they have now a new proposal from the league to review. I think they're working on submitting a counter proposal. From what I understand, there's some internal discussions within that committee and within the league. I know Nneka Ogwumike's been out at Athletes Unlimited. Breonna Stewart's down at Unrivaled. They're all talking all the time on Zoom calls, et cetera. But once we see whatever the Players Association sends back to the NBA, to the WNBA, which I expect any day now, then I'll have a better sense of how far apart those two sides really are, because they were talking, but they weren't exchanging proposals for about 6 weeks there. And I think that really slowed everything down.
All right, so
Pieces are returning. Expansion executives in Toronto and Portland are preparing to build entire identities from scratch, yet they don't even know what financial model they are building under. That is not sustainable for long. The strategy from the players' side was clear. Align contracts, hit free agency together, maximize negotiating power. In theory, it's a unified front. In practice, it is an enormous gamble. Because leverage only works if the other side believes you're willing to endure the consequences. And endurance is expensive. For superstars with endorsements, shoe deals, and overseas contracts, a short delay may be manageable. For minimum salary players fighting to stay in the league, even a few missed paychecks change the equation dramatically. That internal tension is rarely discussed publicly, but it exists in every labor dispute. There is also a perception battle unfolding. Public opinion matters more than ever in modern sports. Fans are hyper-connected. Narratives spread instantly. If the average sports fan starts believing that greed, on either side, is threatening the season, sentiment can shift quickly. Momentum is fragile, and right now, momentum is the most valuable currency the league possesses. Last season, arenas were full, television numbers jumped, jerseys sold, debate shows talked about the league daily. That level of cultural visibility does not happen automatically. It requires storylines, rivalries, stars, and consistency. Consistency is what is at risk. When Caitlin Clark entered the league, she brought an entirely new audience segment, casual fans who may not have previously followed women's basketball closely. Those viewers are not emotionally invested in collective bargaining structures. They are invested in competition. They want to see logo threes, rival matchups, and playoff races. If games are delayed, those viewers may not wait. And that is where the tension intensifies. Union leadership, including figures like Breonna Stewart and Nneka Ogwumike, argue that this moment is precisely when they must push hardest. Revenue is rising, media deals are expanding, visibility is peaking. If structural gains are not secured now, when will they be?
It would be short-sighted for any side to risk permanent damage for temporary positioning. However, progress often requires friction. Revenue-sharing discussions are complex. Defining gross revenue versus basketball-related income involves accounting structures that can drastically alter percentages. Cap smoothing, luxury tax considerations, player benefits, these are not simple line items. They are negotiated meticulously. Transparency is often a sticking point. Players want clarity on how money flows. Owners want predictability in expenses. Both objectives are reasonable. The challenge lies in bridging them without destabilizing operations. Internally, leadership must also manage unity. When 80% of a league hits free agency together, solidarity is tested. If even a small group breaks ranks and signs early agreements under interim terms, leverage shifts. Collective action requires collective patience. Patience is hardest when uncertainty affects livelihoods. From a fan perspective, the message is simple. Clarity is coming soon. It has to. The calendar demands it. March is not symbolic, it is practical. Cap numbers must be circulated, expansion frameworks must be approved, draft logistics must be finalized, training camp dates must be confirmed. These are not optional checklists, they are required steps. If a deal is struck soon, this entire period may eventually be remembered as tense but necessary. A moment where players leveraged momentum to secure meaningful long-term gains while the league preserved structural stability. If delays stretch further, the tone of history changes. Momentum fades quietly, not with explosions, but with distractions. Competing sports narratives, playoff runs, viral highlights elsewhere. Attention migrates. The entertainment market is ruthless. Right now, both sides stand at a crossroads. One path leads to compromise, structured growth, and an energized 2026 season with expansion teams debuting into packed arenas. The other path risks fragmentation, rushed preparation, and diminished excitement. The irony is that both ownership and players ultimately want the same thing, a thriving league that commands respect and financial stability. The disagreement is about pace and proportion. How fast should revenue sharing increase? How aggressively should salary structures evolve? How much risk can ownership absorb in the short term to build long-term equity? Those are strategic questions, not emotional ones. But emotion inevitably enters public discourse. Fans align with personalities, media amplifies dramatic framing, social platforms reward conflict. Behind closed doors, the actual negotiations are likely more nuanced than headlines suggest. Still, urgency remains, because every day without resolution tightens the window for smooth preparation. Every week of silence fuels speculation. Every ambiguous comment is dissected. The league stands at a pivotal inflection point. Expansion is coming, visibility is rising, young stars are emerging, veterans are advocating for structural change, media partners are invested, fans are watching. Alignment is the only sustainable outcome. The next announcement, whether it is a finalized CBA or an extension of talks, will set the tone for everything that follows. It will determine whether this era is remembered as the launch pad for unprecedented growth or as a cautionary tale about mismanaged leverage. For now, all eyes remain on the calendar. March approaches, and with it, the moment where strategy meets consequence, ambition meets reality, and negotiation meets deadline. What happens next will define not just a season, but the trajectory of the league for years to come.